Hey guys, alright, so let's take the two biggest things we learned so far. Some really solid points on perspective and also some basics of shape design. So essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to take this shape, this simple, very basic shape that we just have right now, and I have my boxes, and I'm going to take these boxes and I'm going to carve them into a beautiful, completely put together, finished spaceship design right in front of your eyes using this basic shape. Quite simple, right? So let's go ahead and get started. So I have 3 boxes here. 1, 2, 3 boxes. So that's all I really need. So right here we have essentially what's a curvature, line down that's kind of at a tilted angle, and then just a basic horizontal line relative to the actual spaceship. So this will be our general design. So I'm going to take this box, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to carve chunks out of here. Let me go ahead. And I'm going to like try some things out, erase some things, stuff like that, because this is all like, it's all in the process, right? It's part of the designing. So essentially, okay, so we have our first curvature point. Go ahead and try some other things like that. All right, so here becomes here. I took this big chunk out of the box. We're already starting to see some little shapes showing up here. So let me go ahead, keep going. And we have a little bit of a curvature going down like that, like whoosh, because it does this. Okay. Here, these are going to be engines. We're going to talk about form follows function a little bit later, but essentially speaking, the more functionality something has, the better it is. Let me tell you this. Here's a good secret. If you're ever having problems designing something, maybe you're trying to design some kind of crazy old ancient temple, maybe you're trying to design a beautiful crazy goblin character, who knows? The more backstory you have behind them, the more you can actually detail it, make it look interesting, stuff like that, because you have more things to work off of. So we could ask, well, designing the spaceship, we could ask, oh, what kind of spaceship is it? It might be a, let's call it a cargo spaceship, so it would hold cargo. So we'll add that into the design later. We'll have to say, because it holds cargo, it needs some big engines, so we have some bigger engines over here that we're going to end up designing. And because it's cargo, it's not going to be that fast, it's going to be big and bulky. We're not going to like think that much about it in terms of speed. So it's going to be big, it's going to be bulky, the engines are going to be big, there's going to be a place to put the cargo. And so we're starting to create a narrative here, so we can start to design around that narrative. We can think in terms of functionality. We'll get a lot more into design, functionality, how to design things a lot better, all that other stuff a little bit later, but right now I just want to show you that based on what we've learned so far, we can start applying it. So as I mentioned, this basic shape, we're starting to make this box into that basic shape, at least to a rough degree. So let me go ahead and keep doing that. All right, and let me go ahead and, okay, we have our main cockpit put together. All right, so here's where the engine's gonna be. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna first of all draw, and I'm gonna show you how to use reference libraries, how to like pick designs, how to draw stuff like this. But let me just go ahead, make this easy, and I'm gonna draw a little bit of a turbo engine stuff. Gonna give it an upward look like that. All right, so this will be the engine part, like airplanes have. And the key to drawing something like futuristic, we're gonna be drawing other things, but I prefer futuristic sometimes, or a lot of the time, as you've noticed with some of my art. Well, one big thing to notice is that the best thing you can do in terms of drawing futuristic is to take inspiration from things that already exist. In fact, this is the same guideline you would use for anything. If you're trying to design battleships, you want to look at battleships, maybe World War II battleships, battleships today, all those different kinds of crazy designs so you can get a good idea on that kind of stuff, or in terms of what you should design. For example, if I asked you to design a basic Roman temple, I said you need to design Roman temple, get that all finished, put together, you could draw one right now, absolutely. It would look, unless you're like a historian that knows a lot about these temples, it's probably going to look a little bit lame. That is, the design's going to look a little bit lame. But if you went ahead and Googled 10 images, 20 images of temples, kind of observed them a little bit, observed what kind of designs they had, stuff like that, you would be able to draw a much more interesting temple. The same thing applies here. In this case, drawing spaceships, I know a few basics in terms of what actually entails a spaceship. It's kind of like a jet airplane, but has much better power sources, no real wings, is made for space, stuff like that. So I have the basics of what a spaceship would have. I have an engine. I have another engine for the other side. I have a basic area where there would be cargo, other things like that, where they would hold the fuel, basically the body of the airplane, or I should say spaceship. and I'm starting to design accordingly. If I Google just right now 20, 30 images of airplanes, because that's as close as you can get to a spaceship, then this would be a lot more detailed, a lot more interesting. But as I mentioned, I'm just telling you some basic ideas, some basic things to help you get a better idea as to designing stuff. We're going to go a lot more formally into detail about each of these respective things much later. But as I'm drawing, I like to talk a little bit, as you can tell. So we have a couple engines so far. Of course, it's still a tiny bit rough, but let me go ahead. We have a tiny bit of engines. Let me go ahead and I'll draw the inside of this engine right here. Okay. Like that, like that, like that. Like that, like that. All right. And still trying to follow the basic shape design. And so far, so good. I think it's taking some decent shape. We have airplane taking shape. We're going to talk a little bit about line density a little bit later, but essentially here I want to show you a secret sauce. The reason right now why I can't speak right now. The reason I'm thickening these lines essentially outside of the actual object is because generally speaking, if the lines outside of the object are thicker, or if lines are thicker in some part of your line work, then it seems to be closer, or it seems to pop out more. That's one thing you'll notice. So if you wanted to draw rocks, this is just a quick bonus lesson. If you wanted to, oops, I don't want to be drawing on the base layer. That's a bad idea. If you want to draw rocks, rocks right here, and you drew another rock, and you drew another rock, if you wanted the rocks to look closer to you, you wanted this rock to look closer to you than this rock right here, then you would make the line around it thicker. If you wanted this rock right here to look closer than this rock right here, you would draw another line, or you'd make the lines thicker. Essentially, by doing this is called line weight, you make objects seem closer to you. So that is why I'm boldening out the entire object. It also makes things pop. If I wanted to draw some objects behind this, like maybe I wanted to draw some kind of crazy building or something, I would need to thicken the lines around this spaceship so that it would be able to be differentiated from that background building. Right now, I'm just drawing the spaceship by itself, no crazy stuff like that, but I just wanted to point this out very quick, just for your knowledge. So, yeah, so I'd say it's taking some decent shape right now. We have some basic turbos going on here. I'm going to talk much more in depth about how to, as I mentioned, draw things much more detailed, but so far, so good. Let me go ahead. I'm going to add a little bit of an area where there's going to be the guy that's going to be sitting there, the guy that pilots the ship. He's going to be up here. I'm going to give him a little body. Very basic character just to show that this guy exists, right? There he is. So if anything hits him, like a rock hits him, he's going to die, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later. But as of right now, as I mentioned, this is just a basic like showcase of like using what we know so far. So yeah, we're starting to do some basic designs, some basic developments. Ding, ding, ding. Go ahead and let's add the cargo part. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add another cargo box. This is where I'm going to literally draw a box out of nowhere, following the basic lines. And this is going to be a cargo box. So this will be, let me add a couple like little parts right here. Ding, ding. Up here will be where we have, yeah, that's right quick. Actually, let's remove that. Right here, well, this is where we'll have the cargo. So we'll start drawing a cargo container. And as I mentioned, I'm just using my raw memory. As we get more deeper into the processes and stuff, I'll point out exactly how to do this in a much more refined format. But right now, as I mentioned, it's just demonstration purposes. So we have a piece of cargo right here. Let's go ahead and thicken those lines as well. All right, and it's starting to take shape. We have engine, we have a body of this entire thing, we have a cockpit where the guy is, we have a place where the cargo thing is, and of course we can start modifying this accordingly to be a lot more cargo friendly, absolutely. Because right now this space is kind of useless space. It's not really being used for anything specifically. But as I mentioned, we'll get into it a little bit later. Drawing a line right there. And as I mentioned, have a little fun with it. So out of 3 boxes, we essentially just drew a basically what is a spaceship. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add some shadows to this so it pops more because it still might look a little bit confusing and I don't want that to happen. So let me go ahead, I'm just going to add some very basic shadows right here. Like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Okay. Go ahead and do this. Ding, ding, ding. I'll show you how to add shadows and other things like that a little bit later, but right now, as I mentioned, it's just more of a demonstration of like what's possible. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and erase. Let me go ahead and pick something something that erases stuff. Okay. An easier way would be to just lasso tool it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But right here, we have, go ahead and do that. Okay. Okay. So right here we have what's essentially a very basic spaceship. So initially starting out, we had 3 boxes. We had a little bit of a perspective grid, some boxes, and as I mentioned, this is just a basic demonstration. We'll get into all of this a little bit later. But from there, we were able to develop something with engines, which is, let me go ahead and get my little brush out. Develop something with engines right here, engine right here, an actual body, cockpit, stuff like that. We have a little cargo area, and just out of using some basic boxes and this basic shape dynamic where we have cuts. Below here, below here, below here. Just by using some basic shape dynamics, we were able to create a relatively interesting, awesome design without doing too much research and too much anything else. So I want to show you like some of these parts moving together to create a finished part. Of course, there's a lot more methods, things that I'm doing that I haven't discussed yet, but as I mentioned, I just wanted to show you a very specific small demo showcasing exactly how this stuff comes together. Sound good? All right.